Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Super excited to be kicking off our next series of LinkedIn Lives. I think one thing that we know from running a business ourselves, as well as working with all our clients, is you can have the best product, you can have the best kick-ass strategy, but if you don't have the right team, it means absolutely nothing because it's not going to get delivered and you're not going to see the results. So one thing that we talk about a lot is how do you build that right team? How do you bring in the right people? And how do you manage it in the roller coaster of life, of which is a startup and as you're developing into a big business. So we've got very excited to have Charlotte Melia here today. I've been following your story for a long time and excited to talk to you about everything you've done over the last 10 years. I will hand over to introduce yourself and maybe also explain the sunglasses.
Yes, I want to be clear that I've not lost my mind and become a diva. I actually have an eye infection. So to save everybody from seeing my gammy eye, I've got glasses on. So apologies. And thank you for bearing with me. And thank you, Lucy, for choosing such a great subject matter today, because as you mentioned, my business has been running for 10 years. And I found hiring and maintaining the right people to be one of the most challenging aspects. So hopefully we're going to get some really good learning this afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name's Charlotte Melia. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Dazzle and Fizz, and we're a creative event studio based in Guildford, Surrey. We began from the humblest of beginnings. I started the business with £47.50 in my bank account and an 8-month baby in my tummy. I thought, what a good time to start a business. And it was very much bootstrapped for the first 7 years, whilst I learned the craft. And then in 2020, we decided to take on external investment, and I raised my pre-seed. Then there was COVID. And then last year, I closed my seed round as well. So where we're at today is a team of 17 full-time in the office, 25 of part-time. And we're looking forward to a Series A in the next 12 to 18 months.
Incredible. So let's start right at the beginning, because that's so interesting. So how do you bootstrap, have a baby, and try and do everything yourself? Or how did you find, was it possible to bring in people to support you at the beginning? Or were you literally taking the baby to the parties?
Yeah, I genuinely was. So I went back to work 9 days after having my son, Oliver. And I remember telling the midwives, I've got a party, I have to go and jump around and entertain kids, because at the beginning it was a children's entertainment business and I physically dressed up in the costumes, much younger then. And my mother pushed my son up and down, a 9-day-old baby, in the pram outside. And then we breastfed in the toilets in the interval. So there really was no help there. And I believe in my first year of business, I turned over 33 grand and I had a net of 17. So, and that was to live on. It was, that was the sum of my wealth. So there was no money for anybody else. That just about fed me and the baby. But I had the benefit of youth on my side. I was 25 years old, so it's much more springy.
Yeah, and how so is that obviously developed up to the point that you raised pre-seed in 2020? Who was your first hire, and how did you know that it was the right time to start bringing someone in and trust them with your business?
Yeah, and I remember the first hire being so terrifying. I remember being so afraid that I had the responsibility for somebody else and somebody else's home and life. That's how I felt at the time. So my first hire was a PA. Her name was Grace. And to be honest, it was through sheer necessity. Got to the point where I could not possibly work any more hours in the day. The workload was overwhelming. And at the time, I didn't have a finance team. I didn't have financial forecasts. I didn't have a cash flow. So it was finger in the air. All I know is I can't cope with the work, so I better bring someone else to help me. And it was about as scientific as that. Now we're very, very different in hiring. It's incredibly strategic. It all depends on the numbers, the P&L, the cash flow. It goes not only through myself and my co-founder, it then goes to the board. And for key hires, it can even go to the shareholders as well. So it's gone from finger in the air, guessing, to quite formulaic over the course of a decade.
And how did you, I suppose, what were the key learnings from those first couple of hires? Did they all go well? Did you interrogate them properly? Did you look back at their CVs? Did you know that they're the right skill set? Or was it, oh, I like this person, I feel like she can help me, and I'm too busy to think?
Well, the difficulty is when we were starting out, we had, I think it was like a 5 by 5 meter office in Brookwood, which is this bizarre little village outside of Woking. And that was not glamorous at all. It was absolutely tiny. So there's only a certain level of talent one can attract at that stage of the business, because all you've got to sell is your personality and yourself, and the vision of where we're going to go. So with that in mind, we went for new grads in the early days, and we got fantastic people, I have to say, and they stayed with us for a number of years. But I knew I couldn't get experienced talent at that stage in the business, because we didn't have any financial backing to bringing big key hires. But new grads were a reasonable investment for us financially, and they did have the energy and actually probably the naivety which matched our naivety at the time, because it wasn't run like a well-oiled ship. We were kind of making it up as we were going along. So they were the right personalities to have on board. What I've actually found more challenging, Lucy, is to hire through high growth periods. Because back then it was quite clear what we were. We were this small, family-run, boutique, very, very small business in a little village. Okay, cool, great. Now we have aspirations to go to the moon and beyond. So the past, I'd say, well, since COVID, I found that to be one of the toughest times to hire, because you're coming out of a time of turmoil, out of a time where it's no secret that the events industry was completely destroyed during that period. So you're coming out of that, you're crawling from the rubble, but you want to be over here, and it's getting people on board that can see that vision but can also appreciate where you are now. In a way, I found that harder than hiring in the early days.
Yeah, one thing that definitely resonates, because I think one thing that I struggled with is also that trust, that you've put years and blood, sweat and tears into building your company, and you're going to trust somebody else to help deliver that. And that's no show on them. It's probably more about a control freak nature of myself. But it was that worry that, okay, so anybody that speaks to them, they're going to see them as part of your business, and anything that they do reflects back on you. And how do you relinquish that control and know that they'll deliver it in the same way, if not better?
And something I hear a lot actually from fellow SMEs and founders, that they do struggle with relinquishing that control. It's probably not something I've personally struggled with, to be honest. I've always been quite good at giving people a go. All I'd say is you have to be realistic about the fact they are going to make mistakes, and they're not going to speak to clients the way that you do, and they're not going to email as proficiently as you do. So what I say is, if you make a mistake, it's absolutely fine. You're welcome to make mistakes here. It's learning. No problem. I'll show you the right way. If you make the same mistake again, I might be a bit cross. If you make a different mistake, no problem. It's another learning. If you make the same mistake 3 times, you probably aren't listening. or maybe I'm not delivering the message correctly. But yeah, we do welcome failure, want of a better term, because you have to if you're a scale up, and that's the best way to let yourself relinquish control, and to have an atmosphere of innovation in the business, is to say, look, we're all here to make mistakes. That's how we learn and grow, and to be too harsh on yourself or others when it doesn't go exactly correctly.
Yeah, and having done some event management, there's so many different balls you have to keep in the air that it's generally it's hard to know that anything think that any event will go absolutely perfectly. And I think it's also on that, to build on that, is that honesty, that if something does go wrong, let us know and we can fix it straight away. Don't hold it back, because then it's not it doesn't become a huge problem. It's something that can be solved quickly with the team, but it's giving people, creating that space where they feel trusted, so that they can make a mistake and tell you about it quickly so you can fix it. I think
Which,
that's,
I'm sorry, I think up to 10 staff is quite easy to do
yeah,
because you are so small. What I found since going over 10 staff and getting more towards the 20 and a hierarchy starts to form, I have found it more difficult now to get the truthful information straight away than I did maybe 5, 6 years ago.
oh, that's so interesting, because the managers want to protect the team and make sure they feel,
Yeah, there's in the early days, everybody has direct access to the co-founder all day
yeah,
long, sat in the same tiny 5 by 5 room. But as you grow and change, you have line managers in place. I have found that that's sometimes diluted the messaging, and the messaging does need to be diluted because you, as co-founder, CEO, you can't possibly be fighting every fire, or you won't be fighting the important ones. But that is a mind shift to get used to.
yeah. It's such an interesting point, actually. How did you deal with stopping being one of the team to being the boss, as
Yeah,
it
it's
were?
hard. Like I don't get invited to anything, which is fine by me. I appreciate who wants to hang out with their boss on a Saturday night. Not many people. But yeah, fortunately, I find it quite funny. Um, I quite like laughing about it because I grew up in family businesses. My mother and my father and my uncle were all small business owners, so I can see that dichotomy. And I was an actor, so growing up in a theatre, I was used to having family businesses that still had hierarchy. So I don't know, I'm quite accepting of it, but I know that some other people in my organisation have struggled because as they've become more senior, they have them been isolated from other members of the team for a night out, for example. And that can, the first time it happens, it can be a bit of a sucker punch. You're like, oh no, not friends with anyone anymore. But actually, I see that as a positive sign of growth.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think so. I remember that happening when I was on the management team. It is difficult, but but also freeing, because knowing that you don't need to be at everything as well, and knowing that your team can manage that part and
And
work on the
listen, I was
relationship.
never cool anyway, so I don't know. I've got no expectations to be cool now. I haven't been cool my whole life, and it's nice for me as the owner to see people form their own bonds and relationships and form their own groups. I want them to do that. I want them to have a work bestie. So for me, I feel quite proud when they all go out and hang out together.
Brilliant. And how so I've seen you write a lot about wanting to make sure everyone's a team player, both internally but also with your clients. And that's a big thing for us as well. We talk about being, an extension of your client's team and working with them and feeling like we're here to support them. How do you, that's obviously something that you can talk about a lot, but how do you develop that with the team as they, as they grow internally and as they develop in their roles?
It's a really great point, Lucy, because so often in teams, the focus can be on the sales team and those who are hitting the numbers, but perhaps members of staff who aren't so focused on the fiscal side of things might be overlooked. So therefore, there becomes a disparity between the teams. So what we've done in our organization, as well as having financial goals that everybody has to reach, we also have OKRs, which are non-financial, which every single department has, and every single OKR is essential to achieving that fiscal goal. So, for example, in my organization, we have a warehouse team, we have a production team, we have a design team, then you have the sales and event planning team, and then you have senior management. And if the staff team members in the warehouse aren't nailing their logistics every week, then that's going to slip up the design team, which is going to slip up the sales team, and the whole house of cards falls down. So having those objectives and key results ingrained in each department has really, really helped us to give the team a sense of belonging and togetherness. And it's not all about the numbers. It's more about efficiency and being aware that your department doesn't operate in a bubble. You're a key cog in the wider machine. And I think once people can see that, then they take greater pride in their role as well. And they do start to look out more for their fellow colleagues.
Yeah, I think pride is a really important thing, that people should feel that they're not just a number, that they're really important.
And they are. If box 19 wasn't packed for an event, that would be a disaster. If the clients ordered something and they don't get it, we could not get paid. And that it genuinely is that crucial. So I think framing it in that way has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, and because it's such an important point. And obviously now within the business, you obviously have your physical experiences, but you've also got the digital experiences that are brand led, as well as the app. And how are you able to identify and build the different teams? Because they're obviously quite different skill sets required, app experience versus, huge party.
Yes, and that has been a shift for the team, because when I first started to hire people in for content and digital roles, if we got busy on the event side of things, the events team were like, "Oh, so and so, can you come and help over here?" And everyone was getting sucked into the vortex of the events all the time, even if that wasn't their department. And that wasn't through anybody's fault. It's because that's what we were. We were a small startup, and if a big deal came in, it was all hands on deck. So we had to reframe our minds that no, just because Laura's sat there in marketing and Emily's sat there in content, they're not there to help us. If something's going wrong with the event, they've got plenty of their own stuff to be doing. So that was a real shift. And as well, from a financial position, with the app and with the digital content, it's not as profitable as the events in its early iteration, because we're building the thing. So it's very, very challenging to not overhire and not put too much resource into what is essentially a financial drain, and therefore really punish the sales team who are working their bottoms off to make sure they hit target. But similarly, the other way around, you don't want to not give enough resource to digital, because then you're not building and you're not growing. So when we first started out hiring for these new roles, we had a financial check-in every 7 days, just to see, okay, are we sinking our own ship here? Is this manageable? Is it sustainable? And we let the numbers lead our decision making.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And you can see how, because it's also what I found with that as well. It's different personalities as well. I started in creative agencies, and everyone in creative agencies are the same. They love talking. They love being part of a team. They've always got something to say. They always want to go and be sociable. And actually developing different parts of the team, you find different personalities, and therefore not everybody wants to sit around the table chatting away and talking about their social lives, but that doesn't mean they're not happy and part of it. So how do you, as you develop the team, make sure that the different personalities are accounted for and supported? Because I think that's something that we're always looking at in our team.
Yeah, and we have got such a range of personalities now. 2 of our team members are ex-military, for example. We have hires that don't have English as their first spoken language. People with all ranges of experiences. And for me, as the co-founder, it's my favorite team ever. I like the team being more diverse, because with diversity comes new ideas, new ways of seeing things, and I think you make a better end product because of it. Where this comes to a head for us, it's really like a busman's holiday. For us, it's in the events. So the way we pitch an event to an external corporate provider is the event is the opportunity to satisfy a multi-generational staff, a staff perhaps with neurodivergencies, a staff with different cultures, beliefs, experience, and give them a shared experience that they can all relate to. So this happened to us in January when it was our Christmas party. An events business, we can't do a Christmas party in December because it's too busy. So we did it in January. Oh, great. My mother hasn't brought a key. Please excuse me for one moment. I'm just going to let her in. Sorry.
And just wait for our musical interlude.
Sorry about that. So yeah, we had that challenge when we were doing our January event, and what was really, really key is choosing an activity that didn't revolve around alcohol, number one, and was multi-generational. So we chose an event called High Jingo Bingo, which was like Squid Games meets bingo. And meant you didn't have to have a great level of athleticism or an interest in bingo. It was just fun. It was open. It was accessible. And that was something that everyone really, really got involved in. So yeah, that's how we address that issue of different personalities, is every quarter do something fun, do something accessible, and accept that everyone's idea of fun is really different.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point. I mean, look at High Jingo Bingo. I actually really
cool.
like
And this week we're going to Fair Game, which is like a fun fair carnival.
Oh yeah, the one thing I was really keen to talk to you about. So you've got your core business, and I know that recently, very excitingly, you've set about with the R&D projects, and I think this is something that a lot of our clients look at, and a lot of founders look at, which is, you know, as entrepreneurs, as founders, you're always going to be thinking about what's the next opportunity, and that's not always going to fit within that, you know, your projection of this is our business plan. And I think what's really interesting is, how do you set about, you've got your core business running, which is a day job in itself, or a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. How do you then start to set up a team and put enough time and the right skills to actually really testing out and delivering on this new project, like your R&D project? Probably worth also just explaining for anybody that doesn't know what you're doing, because it's very exciting.
Thank you, Lucy. And yeah, I'm a nightmare. I come up with a new idea every time I have a shower. So the team, I'm like, guys, just had a shower, or just had a walk, or just driven the car, and they're like, no more ideas. And I have learned the hard way to distill my ideas, and we're now in a position where we're very, very clear on our business strategy, and any opportunity that comes in and doesn't align with that, we have to say no to. And saying no as an event planner, which you are inherently a people pleaser, is very, very different. It's a new skill I'm learning, but it is essential to being a successful founder, I believe. So with the R&D project, it was a real passion project for us, and it's something that I personally drove, and it's to improve the sustainability of the events industry, because events is historically wasteful, particularly I'm in the luxury market, so you're just seeing things get thrown away, and it really, really hurts me personally. So we partnered with Imperial College London on a sustainability project, which has been backed by Imperial and headed by Professor Jason Hallett, who's one of the world's most revered chemists. And yeah, we'll be able to tell people more about it soon. But in terms of time and resource, I think if you are going to do an R&D project, that really falls heavily on the founder, because you have to be applying for the funding. I mean, I had to write a 10,000 word essay on polymers over Christmas one year, and I scraped a B at GCSE science. I'm no scientist, so I had to also learn about the polymers first. And I was like, oh goodness. So yeah, you have to be prepared to do it in your own time, in your spare time, founders. Now it's all set up, and we were fortunate enough to receive the grant, and we were fortunate enough to find the team. Now it is quite self-running. There's we've got a wonderful scientist called Jules. She is a PhD student who's pioneering the research under Jason Hallett and Professor Kun Yang and Maria. So now I just get to check in every 4 weeks and see on the progress. But in order to get there, it probably took 2 years.
Yeah, and I think it's great to be honest about how long it does take, because I think you know, the idea of we're all moving quickly because we're in startups. Yes, we're all moving quickly, but not everything then happens as quickly, especially when it means getting funding. And, you know, getting funding is often something that takes, even in good times, takes longer than you think it's going to take. And therefore, having the opportunity to build the team takes longer because you need that funding first.
And it was like, to do a research and development project, you have to have a business that can sustain that sort of obligation as well, because we also had to contribute a significant amount of money into the project as the commercial backer. So I first came up with the idea in 2015, but we weren't in a financial position to support. And then, yeah, from the point of applying for the funding, I think it was about a 2-year process.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to I will be following and waiting the next news. So just thinking about lessons that we can share as a wrap up, what's something you wish you knew when you first started hiring people, that you can clearly see now when you have your business plans and clear objectives and targets to hit when you next hire? What's that one piece of advice someone could have given you?
I think I wish I'd known that someone who's great at an interview isn't necessarily great at the job, and
Yeah.
vice versa. I think interview technique is a whole skill set in itself, and it doesn't necessarily correlate with being an excellent member of the team. I wish I'd known about option shares earlier as well. That is something that we do give our team members, but it wasn't something I even knew about until a couple of years ago. So I wish I'd known about that as an incentive. And I think I would have liked to have come to a more formulaic interview process earlier on. At the beginning, it was kind of just having a nice chat and meeting for a coffee and having a nice hour together, which is all good and well, but it doesn't actually tell you a whole lot about the person. So now we bring people on for trial shifts, and we can extend our probationary period to 6 months. We've tweaked along the way, but that's mean we've also made a lot of mistakes. Like, what I would say to anybody is, this is the hardest part in my mind of scaling a business is scaling the team. So don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. Do unfortunately fire quickly. I think we've made that mistake on a number of occasions, in that we've gone, oh, but I still see something in this person, and you hang on to them when you knew for months they were dead wood. And that can be hard as a woman sometimes as well. I think to be seen as the bad guy. But you have got to learn to hire fast.
Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt on that. I think, because we've had that a few times, and I think sometimes I feel like I'm failing because I haven't managed them properly. Whereas actually, if you understand that people fit particular roles, and if they're not fitting that role, then there's probably a better role out there where they'd be happier and they'd be able to succeed as well.
Yeah.
To help them find that opportunity versus try and fit a square peg in a circular hole.
Definitely. And you can sometimes, as a founder, get a bit of a messiah complex as well. Like, oh, it must be me. I must have not done it. No, it wasn't you. Sometimes people just don't fit the job, and that's okay. So don't take it personally.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Charlotte, thank you so much. And thank you for coming on whilst being poorly as well. We really 100% appreciate this. We will be sharing this in our newsletter on Thursday. And I super encourage everybody to follow you on LinkedIn, because you're very honest about the trials and tribulations and ups and downs of building a business. And I've definitely learned such a lot. And it's an exciting journey to be following. But thank you very much, and I hope you get better. Although I quite like the sunglasses. I might try this on my next call.
Serious. My co-founder said before I came on. I was like, oh, don't think so. Thanks so much.
Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.